Hi everybody, this is my Module 9 case study. All right, so first I wanted to kind of give you an outline of what I'm going to be going over today. I'm going to start out with the case and the facts, move on to legal and or ethical issues, if any, talk about what has happened, the facts that I know. I want to review the information, talk to you about the plans that I have that I could put into place. I'm going to weigh out my options, provide you with the choice, some questions to consider, and then the standard. I hope that this proves to be helpful for you as it was helpful for me as I was making this presentation. So very first off, let's start out with the case and facts. So what is happening? We have assistant principal, myself, Mr. Richard Inman, who has had an issue with a student, James, dealing with his third tardy of the week. He wanted to visit with him about it, but before James had made it to his office, another staff member told Mr. Inman that they saw James give something to another student in the hallway, that student being David Ramos, who was found with a pair of brass knuckles on his body upon further inspection. So what happened here, like what didn't get a chance to happen, is that I didn't think that David Ramos got the chance to report his side of the story. Even students who may have just been witnesses or bystanders didn't get to say anything either, but James did get a chance to kind of own up to giving the brass knuckles to David. So I'm not really sure if bystanders would be needed because James admitted his guilt, like, yes, I did that. When and where did the events happen? The events took place in the hallway of Rocket Junior High, and I'm assuming around 5th period class based off of the information provided. Who is or might be involved in this situation? Well, we have myself, students James and David, the 5th period teacher who reported it to me, James's parents, David's parents, and then later on we have the arresting officer. The director of secondary education is also involved further on. What do the parties involved say? James owns up and says that he did give the brass knuckles to David, and if he didn't take them, he would beat him up. David did not speak up for himself, and he was visibly very upset and appeared to be under a lot of stress. The officer said that he had to arrest both students and charge them with a prohibited felony weapon on school property. James's mother hopes that he will learn his lesson this time, and David's mom doesn't understand why David is being punished when David was not guilty. And the other student did admit to making him hold and was kind of bullying him to hide the brass knuckles for him. The director of secondary education says that Mr. Inman has to follow through with the expulsion papers for both boys no matter what. The school has a zero tolerance policy that demands both boys be expelled for no less than 45 days. Mr. Inman believes that he should not have to punish both boys for one set of brass knuckles, especially since James admitted to forcing or making David to hold them. Report. Has anyone been harmed by the action or the decision of another, and if so, in what way? Yes, obviously David Ramos is being harmed. He is being punished for being a victim in the wrong place and in the wrong time scenario. And if we follow through with the punishment outlined in our zero tolerance policy, it definitely could hurt his academics and his future. Does the action or situation contravene an existing law? So brass knuckles at school, definitely probably not supposed to happen. It should be a broken rule at school for sure. I definitely agree with that. But expelling a student for brass knuckles is something that's definitely up to each district. I don't believe that any laws were broken. Was there a breach of contract? Were the actions discriminatory, or constituted harassment? So when we talk about the breach of contract, I really wish that a lot of different people that were in this situation had handled it differently. For starters, I wish that 5th period teacher who witnessed the handoff had let me know about it in a quieter, more private manner. I wish that I would have been able to question James about it first, privately, and I wish I would have had a discussion with David about it privately as well, without the presence of any officer or officers. I think that if that would have happened, maybe I could have protected both of my boys better. The actions, I believe, are not discriminatory or harassment, just a very blanketed punishment for all, no matter how much or how little you were involved in the situation. There was very little control in this situation allowed up to administrators, as it was immediately pushed to police officers and the director of secondary education due to the district's zero tolerance policy. Mr. Inman is refusing to follow through with the DAEP for the student he believes is being wrongly punished. And DAEP is the district's alternative education plan, or district's alternative, education plan, sorry. So section 4, we have the facts. The people that are involved are James David Ramos, myself, the principal, the fifth period teacher, David's parents, the director of secondary education, student staff members. James's parents are also involved. Well, his mother anyways. She just is not upset about this, and she's like, you know what, I hope he learns his lesson. She's used to him being in trouble. The place that this happened is Rocket Junior High, and some of these students in question are from the South Side, which is kind of noted to be, you know, a little bit of a rougher area. I don't have a ton of background information on this district. I just know that they're good size because it mentioned 900-ish students, and because it's Rocket Junior High, I'm not sure if this is a 9 through 12 school or a 6 through 12 school, so that's definitely something I kind of have a question about and would be interested in learning more about. And I know that the board has adopted zero tolerance policies based off of the information that was provided to me. All right, the information. So, could the conflict, the situation, or the decision be damaging to stakeholders or the community? Well, I definitely think that the conflict could be damaging to David Ramos and other students who are in the same position or can really identify with David. Young underclassmen who run the potential of getting into trouble based on their fear of other students is something that I definitely have an issue with. If other stakeholders or community members find out that the students are too afraid to stick up for themselves and they run the risk of serious punishment, that could definitely be detrimental to the mental health of the students as well as their academic success. And so, yes, to me, that is a damaging decision. What individuals and groups have an important stake in the outcome? Well, definitely David and David's parents and other students who are like David. And I feel like Mr. Inman, the principal, definitely has some important stake in this outcome too. Have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted? I do think that all the stakeholders have been consulted for this particular matter. However, when it comes time to reviewing and changing policies, Board of Education members will need to be consulted, as well as other administration and teachers, because we cannot do this alone. This needs to be something that's done with many different hands involved. Can I learn more about the situation, and do I know enough to make a decision? I feel like I do know enough about the situation to start exploring my options and later on make a decision. So let's talk about my options. I could do nothing. I could help parents organize a protest. I could fill out the paperwork and do as I'm told, or I could refuse and work on changing policy. Okay, let's talk about my pros and cons for option number 1, which is doing nothing. Pros, David can still come to school and James is disciplined. Cons, well, I'm not following protocol. Policy isn't being followed, so expectations are not being met. And this is something that I might get written up for. And I just want to note that, doing nothing would actually be really hard for me. It's just not in my nature to sit back and watch things unravel. I understand that there's a time and place for that. However, when students are involved and their success or lack thereof is at stake, that's something that I have a hard time just sitting back and waiting. So option 2, protest. Well, I do think that this protest would be extremely far-fetched and definitely out of my comfort zone. You can't deny that informing parents of a situation that could greatly affect their kids is out of the question. So some pros, I could get multiple families involved. It would really spread the word. Lots of people upset and voicing their opinion in a respectful manner. I'm not talking about burning things or anything like that, but, just calling board members and saying, what if this was your kid, and calling other people in our building, that would be hard to ignore, and it could work to get a very much needed change. So some cons, I really could run the risk of creating a lot of misinformation and getting angry parents. I feel like my students would be confused. I also feel like this is very juvenile. Again, it could take a long time to see the changes, and actually it could make things a lot worse while we're trying to work towards this. And then I want to note, if we have angry parents, when we're angry, we don't always do a great job of getting our point across. And so, yeah, I could just see things getting way worse if we did that route. So my option number 3 is to fill out the paperwork. Pros, I have the documentation, I can keep my job, and I'm following policy. Cons, I'm not standing up for my students. It is an unfair punishment, and I feel like a decision to just go with this and fill out the paperwork would actually be damaging to the relationships I have built with staff and students, and I think it would create or begin creating a negative environment. One thing that I want to know is, when I have that documentation, I could potentially write in there that we are wrongly giving out a punishment to a student who is being taken advantage of the situation. And I think that that would be something kind of nice to kind of throw in there. That way I'm getting my 2 cents in there. So it doesn't seem like I'm failing the student as much. However, David Ramos is still going to be punished. Okay, option number 4. I could refuse and work to change the policy. So while my pros would be standing up for students, working for a change, creating and maintaining a positive environment for all, and we could work together for a solution. When I refuse to fill out that paperwork, I do feel like that's a way for me to advocate for students for a positive change within our district. And this would also allow me the opportunity for leadership groups like my building leadership team and my district leadership team to work together to create a change that would benefit our school. The cons for this, I'd be putting myself in a position to be reprimanded. I would not be following policy, and some stakeholders may view this as unfair. So I want to remind you of my moral compass, because all of my sections here are respect, integrity, fairness, and putting people first. And when I do all of those things, I make my best decisions. When I leave out any of these components, best decisions are not made. So by using my moral compass, I believe that option 4 is my best choice. It is my job before anything else to keep students safe and to set them up for success. So let's talk about my implementation. In order to implement my choice, I know I need to act quickly, professionally, and remain true to the facts. I would inform David's parents that I'm working on a solution so that way David can continue to stay in school. The mom or the dad, both parents involved, may want to begin thinking about why this is unfair to David and how this would impact their son in a negative way if we followed through with the behavior expectations. I would also inform my director of secondary education that I would not be following his policy due to the confession we got from James and the unfairness to David and other students that this could potentially affect. And I would want to meet with my BLT and work through some possible policy changes. I would take those options that we came up with to my district leadership team, where we could then decide on the policy that we believe would best fit our school. I would then take our new policy and ask the Board of Education to approve it. In this policy, my hopes are that we remove the zero tolerance policy, because when we allow a zero tolerance policy, we no longer get control of the situation, and each situation is different, and our punishment for students cannot and should not be a blanketed punishment. We need to allow for flexibility while dealing with students, and we need to create some sort of a matrix and outline possibilities for discipline issues. However, we need to be able to remain in control. When we turn it over to the police, we have lost all control to protect our students. I would also ask my Board of Education and my supervisor if our mindset is to educate kids and help them succeed, or if our goal is to punish them. Where is our focus? Is it on the kids, and if so, in what way? Or is holding true to our zero tolerance policy that removes them from school whenever possible something that we are proud of? My reflection. So in this case study, it really did teach me the importance to have policies and procedures that put in place that already protect our students and help guide their behavior. Instead of having a zero tolerance policy, we want to make sure that we still have control over each situation, as some situations are definitely more harsh than others. I also think that having students discipline and not a blanket punishment for all involved, no matter the level, is definitely important. But it's a great reminder for me to begin looking at my current school district's policies and make sure that they fit and align with my beliefs. Previously knowing my non-negotiables and being proactive versus reactive will prove to be helpful to me in many situations. I do believe that I've met the requirements of this assignment for this standard selected above, and I know that our legal and ethical duties are important as we are modeling continuously for staff, students, and parents. But by leading with a compassionate heart and doing the right thing, it will always be a focus of mine. I just dealt with a situation involving ethics and policy recently, and I acted in the form of ethics and putting my students first, even though it might not have aligned with the policy. I would regret any choice that I made where students weren't at the forefront of my decision making, and I hope to hold on to that throughout my career.